Happy homecoming, everyone. Yes, yes. We are so pleased to be here today with one of our distinguished alums from homecoming this year, Mr. Mark Hughes, an author and a historian and a ham radio operator.
Yes, sir.
And a technology instructor.
Yes, sir.
And we're so pleased to have you here. I think first I'd like to just say hello and talk about this, if that's all right.
That's fine, sir.
You've got 6 books out now?
Well, I have 5. The 6th one is supposed to be out sometime in the fall. However, it was also supposed to have been out in May. I don't know May of what year. Book publishers are unique to have to deal with. I've had 3, and he's the best of the lot.
Well, good. We look forward to that. And that is about the Confederate soldiers, yes?
It's Confederate soldiers in the American Civil War, although I wrote part of the Union soldiers in the American Civil War. I just don't know how much I wrote till it comes out. Now, see how much of that they kept.
Well, good. I did take a look at this book, and it was great because it is a very handy guide. It's not in a long-form narrative. It's filled with charts and graphs and photos and times and dates and quotes. Information that I got that was interesting. There's a section here on women in the Civil War, on African Americans in the Civil War, Native Americans in the Civil War. Facts and figures, like I had no idea it was over $6 billion is what it cost us, and in terms of money, but over 600,000 dead. Is that right?
Probably about 58 to 100,000. That battle has been discussed. There's some revisionist historians out there who say you 750,000 died. But officially, we know 359,000 Union soldiers died. We estimate approximately 229,000 Confederates, because there are much fewer Confederates in service.
Oh, well, that's still a lot of lives.
It is.
A lot of lives. So it was terrific to breeze through. It was great, and it's handy, and I was so pleased. You of course got both your bachelor's degree here at Southeastern.
Yes, sir.
And your master's in the 80s. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell me a little bit about your time at Southeastern?
I was an electronics technician for 13 years. I had a 2-year degree from a community college where we lived in North Carolina. And one night, my wife told me I was going back to college. I wasn't going to be happy until I went back to college. And I had a number of reasons I just couldn't go back to college, and she had an answer for every one of them. That was in November. I was here the next January. I really enjoyed Southeastern. It's like any other college. You learn about what you put into it. I had some very good professors, and I was lucky. I knew I wanted to teach electronics, so I was able to observe some excellent professors.
Now that was when the technology building on campus was an underground facility, yes?
No, it was above ground, but it had plants growing through the roof.
Right, okay, that's it.
It's different. It was different.
That building, you've noticed, is no longer here.
Yes, sir.
It's a parking lot now over next to the Visual Art Building.
Right.
But it's great. I wonder, can you think of a particular time or a professor or someone who really made an impact on you while you were here?
I was lucky. I had several excellent professors. I think Dr. L. David Norris helped me more in my career after I left Southeastern. He conned me into writing my first book, and I do mean the word con. And every time we talk, he would say, well, Mark, have you ever made any money writing a book? And I was talking to him a couple years ago, and I said, no, Dr. Norris, you've written 8, I've written 4. I'm half as in debt as you are. Because my first book cost about $3,000 to research at the National Archives in Washington. Multiple trips to there. But the last book, the New Civil War Handbook, is done fairly well. So I'll have to tell them we made a few pennies. I can't quote sales figures because I don't really know exact numbers. But we're on our 6th printing, and it's in over 300 libraries in 28 countries. So it's done fairly well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But you do not write a book to get rich. You write a book as an expensive hobby.
There you go. There you go. I wonder if we've got several students here in the studio audience today. If you had any sort of advice from them, as they're all everywhere from freshmen to seniors here in the group today.
Like I said, you can get as good education here as you can anywhere else. There are a few fields you would need to be. If you want to be an engineer, you really need to be in an engineering school, medicine and a medical school. But for the general type education and for specific programs here, you can get as good an education here as you can anywhere else. And in fact, probably better because you have more contact with your professors. You're a name, you're not a number here. And I was lucky. I had very good professors, and I learned a lot from them. I learned from Mr. Larry Nolan, for example, writing 25 equations on the board to prove how our electronic circuit doesn't work. You can take one good analogy and replace all 25 equations.
Well, there you go. That's great. Good teaching will trump anything, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I had, our time is growing short here, but I actually had a wonderful quote from the book. Do you feel comfortable reading? And if you don't,
I'm sorry, I am visually challenged, and I haven't been able to read printed material for 7 years.
Well, if you don't mind, do you mind if I read a
Please
quote
go
from
right
your book?
ahead, sir.
It was very powerful, very moving, and I thought it was very thought-provoking and thoughtful. And so you'll all indulge me, will you? Yeah? Okay, good. Yeah, they don't have a choice. They're stuck. But indulge me. It's a beautiful passage from his book that I want to share. It's a quote from Lieutenant George Benedict of the 12th Vermont, describing the night after the Battle of Antietam. Very powerful in this day and age to think about the hazards of war. He said, "Each of them barns was a field hospital, its floor covered with mutilated soldiers and surgeons busy at the lantern-lighted operating tables. By the door of one of them was a ghastly pile of amputated arms and legs, and around each of them lay multitudes of wounded men, covering the ground by the acre, wrapped in their blankets and awaiting their turns under the knife. I was stopped hundreds of times by wounded men, sometimes accompanied by a comrade, but often wandering alone, to be asked in faint tones the way to the hospital of their division. Till the accumulated sense of the bloodshed and the suffering of the day became absolutely appalling. It seemed to me that if every square yard of the ground for many square miles must have its blood stain."
Now, the Battle of Antietam was the bloodiest one-day battle of the war. It's fought in Maryland. Robert E. Lee had invaded Maryland, and the Union stopped him there. We'll be showing some pictures from Antietam and talking a little bit more about the battle, how a Union general with 120,000 men at his disposal couldn't defeat a Confederate army of less than a third that size. But tomorrow at 2 o'clock over in the Bennett Library, we'll be doing a short presentation.
Yes, it's sort of a reminder of the horrors of war.
It is.
And we need to take those things seriously. It has been a pleasure having you here. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Well,
we appreciate having you here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mark Hughes, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us.